Hey, what's up, G fans? I just want to post a video because I've seen a lot of interesting. I've seen one very interesting topic in the past few months since Shin Godzilla got released, and I saw it three times, which was very enlightening. And there's been this very big debate: who is the stronger Godzilla between Shin Godzilla and Legendary Godzilla? And it's a very interesting debate. I mean, who is the strongest Godzilla between those two? There's a lot of things to keep in mind about a fight between these two monsters. Okay, let's look at the first one, Legendary Godzilla. Let's dive right in. Legendary Godzilla is a much older creature than Shin Godzilla, slightly smaller, but only by a little bit. He's about 355 feet, and Shin Godzilla is about almost 400, like right underneath, like 398, I believe, or so. So the size difference isn't too big, and from what we can guesstimate from what we've seen in the one movie both of them have been in, Legendary Godzilla is a pretty strong monster. I mean, he was a pretty active fighter. He was no slouch in combat. Like a lot of the previous Godzillas, we saw him actively pushing around the female Muto, who's almost as big as himself, pushing her back without any effort, and then knocking her basically on her ass, and then bring his gigantic foot down on her chest and holding her down with ease. So what we already know from the movie itself that Legendary Godzilla could take on either one of the Mutos with ease, which is basically the essence of the fight. I mean, once he's one-on-one with each one of them, the fight is pretty straightforward. The male Muto he kills with one swipe of his tail, crushing him literally like a bug. And the female Muto, who physically is overpowered by him and then is overpowered by his atomic breath, although he fails to finish her off at that point the first time. And then the second go around, when Godzilla finally gets her with the blast straight down the mouth, I mean, that was, of course, just automatic death for any monster. Orga felt that wrath in Godzilla 2000, and yeah, that was instant death. Ripped her damn head off. So, some people say Godzilla 2014 is a pretty strong version of Godzilla, and I've seen a lot of people say, well, he tires out quickly. I mean, there are many points in the fight where Godzilla was tired, and first I want to say that I enjoy those moments because they gave Godzilla some character and made him feel a lot more realistic. This giant monster who's already defies all reality by even existing, and then to give him something like fatigue is actually pretty realistic. Let alone that, Godzilla actually went through a lot in the movie. I mean, he fought all damn night. Let alone that, he covered a whole lot of distance in a very small amount of time. So the fact that he didn't have energy to fight literally almost all night and still get back up in the morning to head back home, I mean, that's still actually pretty impressive. So 2014 Godzilla still has pretty decent size and immense strength and agility, and the fact that he does fatigue more than the Japanese Godzilla per se, he can still put up quite a fight. His only real downsides to me, besides maybe getting tired quickly, fairly quickly I should say, because being able to fight at night is not getting called tired quickly, is probably the fact that his atomic breath seems a little weaker compared to a lot of previous Godzilla. It was more like the 1954s, and there's a lot of reasonings behind that and why that is. To look at just the movie by itself, people are saying, and which I agree with, it was done to be more like the 1954 Godzilla's breath, which is kind of like more like a gaseous thing, so it could ignite an opponent and burn them badly, but it doesn't cause outright explosions unless it hits something that's directly flammable, like, I don't know, gasoline or something. So it's definitely not one of the stronger breaths, although still quite damaging. A giant monster like the female Muto was hurt quite badly by it. But in the novelization of the movie I heard and the original script, Godzilla has supposedly a stronger version of his breath that we never got to see because of the fact that Muto's EMP blast they release actually knocks out the initial energy spark he needs to set it off. So very well, which I'm pretty sure that would sound about right. in the future, we probably will see a much stronger version of Legendary Godzilla's breath, which would make sense if he's going to fight monsters like King Ghidorah and Rodan and Mothra in the future. But for now, we'll just go with what we saw in the movie and say the breath is just meant to be more like the 1954 version, more like a gaseous thing. It just burns opponents. We never got to see it hit a building, but we know it has fairly limited range. Although we know damn well that once it hits something, it does do quite a amount of damage. After all, if it hits something on the inside, I mean, the Muto's body was completely destroyed from the inside out, including melting away the neck entirely and outright killing her. It was overkill. So Legendary Godzilla actually has a whole lot going for him in this fight. And then there's Shin Godzilla. Shin Godzilla, like I said before, is slightly bigger. Uh, he's slightly bigger, and I mean, as far as being agile goes, I would not give agility to him at all. He's definitely more like the Godzilla from Mothra versus Godzilla 1954. He is very slow and lumbering, and he only really strikes back when he feels the need to, which we saw in the movie. Uh, Godzilla only strikes back in the movie Shin Godzilla when he actually was harmed and in pain. Then he decided to lash back and just unleash hell on humanity, which was impressive. That being said, it's pretty clear that in a fight against other monsters, it's not quite sure how he'd be able to react physically wise, since his arms are also small and definitely not meant for grappling with another monster, unlike Legendary Godzilla. So in physical combat, I'm pretty sure Legendary would take it and probably be able to handle a monster as big as Shin Godzilla. But that's still a little debatable, since the difference in size between the female Muto and Shin Godzilla is definitely there. So physically, I definitely want to give the edge to Legendary because he's not that much smaller and he's very strong and very fast for his size. I mean, you could see that in the movie, the way he immediately just tackled her and took her by the throat and then was pushing her backwards through the city. I mean, that's pretty impressive in itself. So, I mean, the fact that he lashed onto the male Muto with just his jaws alone and tossed him like a rag doll before finally finishing him off was pretty impressive. You know, close quarters combat, I definitely got to give it to Legendary. But then comes the other factors that involve Shin Godzilla. Comes down to his breath and his messing this up. Adaptability. As we saw in the movie, Shin Godzilla adapts to the threats he is faced with. For example, when he's faced with the stealth bombers, the first thing he unleashes is his normal breath, which is pretty damn powerful. I'll get more into that in a moment. But when he senses that once again he's about to be bombed from above, which technically speaking there's no way to defend from, unlike previous Godzillas, he releases the energy through the spines themselves, which is basically almost omnidirectional, and they can strike any target before they even come close to him. So that gives him a human advantage right there. There's no way he can be attacked from behind at all, and those beams are devastating. You can see they saw right through buildings like Swiss cheese. These are like Gauss beams, basically. They can cut through damn near anything, and they do. But yeah, that's the funny thing though. They can slice through anything like a laser beam, but they're also still concussive and cause explosions, as we saw during Godzilla's attack on Tokyo. These blasts, when they hit a building, they still blow them apart and tear them to pieces like nothing. So it's apparent that this beam cell has devastating strength. That goes without a doubt. And I'll mention that in the movie, as we can see, Godzilla always adapts. Shin Godzilla, like Legendary Godzilla, has a fatigue factor that drains his power. Although I will say this, Shin Godzilla power, it drains a lot faster than Legendary Godzilla's. If he's just moving without having to use his nuclear breath, he seems to be fine, although he doesn't waste his energy retaliating to the military. It doesn't matter to him at all. But when he feels he's threatened, he will unleash it. However, once the energy is released in such a strong, offensive maneuver, it drains him almost entirely of energy within probably less than an hour from what we saw on screen. I mean, Godzilla sweeping his breath across Tokyo probably took him literally only a matter of minutes, not hours. So I'm being generous there. And then once the energy was gone, it completely exhausted him, and then he went into hibernation mode, which took him several days, if not I recall, I think it was a week or 2 weeks to recover to gain back his energy. But Shin Godzilla does adapt though. So when they attack Godzilla again at the end, he's learned from his past mistake. He does not rely so much on the back rays to defend himself and uses more of his tail beam, which I presume uses less energy because after he starts using a lot more. His tail beam, his mouth beam, and those two alone are still enough to fend off the drones and their missiles for quite some time. But even then, his energy still runs out, and then he's left to just basically use physical strength alone, which is not enough because his enemies are too small for him to counter against, which leads to him eventually, taking the win from Godzilla. But of course, if you saw at the very end, his body was already adapting to that situation by making a number of small Godzilla humanoid clones, which, Shin Godzilla's scale, the end of his tail, we assume those creatures are probably, still technically speaking, pretty big compared to humans. But the point of the matter is that Shin Godzilla adapts readily right in the middle of the combat situation to anything that presents a threat to himself, and he adapts directly in the way in which is threatening him. As I said in the movie, as he evolves right then and there, not generationally. He evolves right then and there in one organism to what's happening around him. Unlike Legendary, who's been this prehistoric hunter who he doesn't really change his behavior according to what's going on. He simply acts out of instinct and he does what needs to be done, which is hunting the Mutos to no end, including harm to himself and to others. So being able to adapt would help Shin Godzilla. I mean, he'd probably analyze the Legendary Godzilla's fighting style and think of something to counter. However, it still takes time for him to evolve. As we saw with his fight with the humans, it took him a few weeks to evolve the tail adaptation to allow energy to come through the tip of his tail. That took a few days, so he's not going to have a few days to adapt to Legendary Godzilla's fighting style at all. So then we go down to the breath. Breath, and I say durability because these things go hand in hand with these two Godzillas especially. Because in the golden days, you saw, the strongest Godzillas, the Heisei, and some of the Millennium versions have very tough skin and breath that was incredibly powerful. Although, yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. But so when it comes to breath, I'd say by far Shin Godzilla has a more powerful breath. It has much farther reach. He won't have to even be close to his opponent to hit them. We've read in supplementary material, and in the movie itself, Shin Godzilla has a sort of a radar type thing embedded into his body like real animals. So he knows where his enemy is almost at all times, basically. Like I said, there's no sneaking up on him. But since it's a fight between two Godzillas, and Godzilla doesn't really spend much time sneaking on his opponents, well, except for Legendary, actually he did do it once. He snuck up on the female Muto, and that's when he killed her. I mean, there's kind of stealthy, but either way, that's not going to work on Shin Godzilla because he'll basically always know where his opponent is thanks to radar sense. And he has a stronger breath by any means. And as far as durability goes, I mean, let's face it, Legendary Godzilla is pretty hard to hurt. As we saw in the movie himself, he took several atomic bombs to the face without any damage. Although like I said, these are older nuclear bombs. Still, these are still nuclear bombs. I mean, these are still the same bombs that leveled Japanese cities as a whole. So they're still powerful, regardless of what you want to say. These are powerful weapons, and they didn't hurt Legendary Godzilla at all. And then later in the movie, we saw him taking artillery shells like from ships and tanks. So it's clear he can't be hurt. Those didn't cause a scratch on him. The only thing that caused any physical damage to Godzilla was the Mutas themselves, and not just the rule of monster was that other monsters can usually hurt each other even though other weapons by maybe humanity usually can't, because the Mutas actually made him bleed after a while using their scythe-like and very jagged arms. They make him bleed quite a bit and hurt him badly, but not really so much that it impaired his fighting in any kind of way. So there's that to keep in mind. And then there's Shin Godzilla. Now, mind you, Shin Godzilla, a lot of people say he's fragile. He's actually pretty damn durable himself, just on our early military scene. He took a lot of firepower from tanks, artillery, and jets, dropping very big explosives on Shin Godzilla. He took no damage whatsoever. So much that Legendary, he didn't bother, once again, like Legendary, because he didn't bother even, dealing with them. He just kept on walking, like, whatever, who cares? These are like ants, if even that, compared to him. But one scene does stand out, and that is this stealth bomber scene before, which makes Shin Godzilla actually react to what's going on around him. I guess they have very, very big ordnance. I didn't know that myself. I just into the movie. As they said in the movie himself, the bombs they're going to drop on Shin Godzilla before he went crazy with the ray will be enough to level almost all of Tokyo themselves with just the bombs, which everyone was in a rush to get out of the city. And when just one of these bombs hit Shin Godzilla in his spines directly, we see a shower of blood and Shin Godzilla yelling in anger and pain, which then leads him to react to this heat ray. Now, this is important to note because it is pretty damn rare for any human weapon to ever hurt any version of Godzilla whatsoever. It's only been recorded a few times in Godzilla history, in fact. The only times I can think of off the top of my head are Mothra versus Godzilla, I forget what it was actually called, the little electrocution plan, though, they had to shock him with the 3 towers. That actually worked pretty well. They damn near beat him because they fucked it up for themselves. Yeah, that's about it for the Showa era. The only time they actually had him on the ropes. The Heisei era, they had him a few times with cadmium, which they ended up using in Shin Godzilla to a certain extent. And they use also the spinal blast to blow away his lower brain, which would probably work wonders on Shin Godzilla, technically speaking. If you could get them in, though, without him destroying the back rays, probably wouldn't be possible. And there's Millennium and so forth. I'm not going to go too much into that because there's a lot of instances. Millennium Godzilla is slightly weaker than Heisei Godzilla. That we all know that by now. So that being said, I mean, the one bomb, of course, didn't hurt him enough to kill him or seriously wound him, but we all saw the blood, thousands of gallons of blood being put on the streets from Godzilla. So there's no denying it. He can be hurt by mortal weapons in a sense, but then his body adapts. I guess the whole point with Shin Godzilla is, though, he's a hard target to hit when it's going to count. Like I said, he learns when the drone try to hit him with bombs. It probably wouldn't be anywhere near as strong as a stealth bomber's bombs, though. He still stopped them all the same from even touching him. So I'm going to give durability to Legendary Godzilla from what I've seen. I mean, a missile from a stealth bomber is still nothing compared to an atomic bomb. So if a stealth bomber missile made Shin Godzilla bleed, even if it caught him off guard, that goes without saying. If it made him bleed and Legendary Godzilla take a whole atomic bomb to the face and be unhurt, and he took several of these within a course of a few days or months, then durability also has to go to Legendary. So in this type of fight, to me, it comes down to these main factors. If Legendary Godzilla can get close enough, then he may just be able to kill Shin. Because, like I said, he has still a pretty decently strong heat ray. And that's the thing to me. I don't know if he'll be doing enough damage to kill Shin, but if he can do like he did the female Muto, tackle Shin and get him to the ground before he can retaliate with his heat ray, and then use his heat ray to blast Shin through his own mouth or through his own weaker body, then he may be able to do it. But like I said, this only works if Legendary can get in close enough. That's the only way. That is the only way he can do it. If he can't get in close, then he's not going to win because this Legendary Godzilla's breath does not work really far range from what we've seen so far, unless he gets a stronger breath version in Godzilla 2 and Godzilla vs. King Kong. But as of right now, I see the only way he can win is if he gets in close, because far range, I mean, military ordnance is one thing, but Shin Godzilla's breath, I'm pretty sure, would do significant damage to Legendary Godzilla. And let's face it, if we're talking the finale of each of the movies, Legendary Godzilla, was pretty consistent, but Shin Godzilla kept evolving. So now imagine this: Shin Godzilla comes out of the water. Shin Godzilla's already on land, or vice versa. It doesn't really matter. The point is there's distance between them. Shin Godzilla sees him. He sees a big threat like that. He knows probably he cannot just walk it off like he did the tank. So he'll probably react with what first? His heat ray. And as we've seen in the finale of Shin Godzilla, he'll probably use his breath from his mouth and from his tail to do double the damage. And I'm going to go on a limb here and say a pretty obvious thing that Shin Godzilla's laser breath is going to be a lot more damaging than Muto's claws. So yeah, if Legendary Godzilla cannot take it and getting close enough, he's going to lose. So summing it up, basically, I think the fight can honestly go either way. I'm not saying I want to be middle of the road, but that's my analysis. So to me, whoever is going to win becomes all about distance and how close they are in combat. Like I said, Legendary Godzilla, I'm pretty sure would easily whomp Shin in full-on close quarters combat because he has stronger arms to grapple his opponent. He definitely is strong as shit. We know that. And he has greater endurance. That's the thing. Even if Shin Godzilla does a lot of damage with his breath, if it doesn't kill Legendary Godzilla is going to keep coming, as he saw in the movie. Legendary Godzilla lasted all night in that fight with the Mutos, and he very rarely needed a break. And the only time he ever stopped when he was crushed by buildings, triple his size, and then he still kept coming, even with the bloody wounds. So Legendary Godzilla will not stop. But the only way he wins, like I said, is if he gets in close. And because of the fact that Shin Godzilla runs out of energy so fast, I think Legendary could do it. So, I mean, if I said the fight goes on, let me put it this way: the only way Shin Godzilla is going to win is if the breath weapons kill Legendary from far range. That's the only way he's going to win. So, if I had to pick a side, I think Legendary would take it. But like I said, it all depends on how much Legendary can take. And from what I've seen, he can take a whole lot, if not more, than Shin. So, I mean, in my personal opinion, what I've seen in the movies presented without any other things in novels and tie-in products, I think Legendary could take him. No offense to Shin, I love Shin, I love that movie a lot, but I think Legendary can take him. So that's my analysis on it. Who would win between Legendary Godzilla versus Shin Godzilla? I think Legendary takes it hands down if he gets in close, but Shin will put up quite a fight. Let's discuss this matter in the comment section, guys, and thanks for watching.